Red soil hissed under Dr. Cairo Hale's boots as the rover doors folded open. Light from the distant, diminished sun scattered across rust-colored plains and caught the silver canisters she held in both arms. Pressure-sealed cylinders filled with the first trees Mars would ever know. They were not exactly trees as Earth defined them. The trunks were bred from poplar DNA, spliced with extremophile microbes, their leaves transparent as dragonfly wings, so every photon could be used. Still, Kyra whispered to them as though they were redwoods, promising water, wind, and time. She stepped onto the graded pad of Colony Theta and inhaled out of habit, forgetting that her helmet provided the air. Carbon dioxide, argon, a ragged bit of oxygen, exactly the mixture she hoped her forest would someday overhaul. Ahead, a half-finished concrete archway gleamed beside inflatable hab pods. At its base stood Jonah Vidal, the colony's chief architect, arms folded, expression flat as a lunar plane. The rumor around the inbound ship had labeled him brilliant and impossible in equal parts. He watched her approach with the posture of a man waiting to solve a problem he had already decided was unsolvable. "You're the botanist," he said through an open comm channel. "Exobiologist," Kyra corrected. "Right, the one who's going to make the planet sprout daisies." He glanced at the canisters. "Are those the daisies?" "Trees," she replied. "If they make it through the first sol, the roots will double by next week." Jonah shrugged, like he encountered miracles before breakfast and found them dull. "Just don't put 'em near the city wall. I don't want root systems undermining foundations we haven't even poured yet." Kyra stifled a retort. She had landed barely 10 minutes ago. No sense starting a feud with the man who controlled the colony's 3D printers, concrete mixes, and doling of habitat space. Instead, she asked, "Where can I find the environmental regulators?" Jonah pointed toward a row of matte black vents that puffed heat into the frigid air. "You'll be fighting a losing battle out there. Atmosphere's only 400 pascals this season. You sure these things don't need, air?" "They need what we give them," Kyra answered. "That's kind of the point." When she moved away, Jonah muttered, "Pointless." But his comm was still open, and she heard it. The first meeting of the Colony Council convened that same evening in a dome the size of a school classroom. Translucent panels showed the swollen red dusk shading into violet. Kyra sat between hydro engineers smelling faintly of reclaimed water, and geologists still dusty from field scan. Jonah, crisp in a charcoal jumpsuit streaked with polymer sealant, unfurled holographic schematics of a metropolis. Nested domes, interlocking plazas, solar arrays tilting toward the pale sun. "We need complete enclosures for Phase 1, he said, voice smooth, measured. 98% of life support occurs indoors. Outside is romantic, but romance doesn't keep lungs filled." Hira raised a hand. "Phase 1 also includes ecological startup. Every kilogram of atmosphere our forest produces is a kilogram we don't have to ship from Earth. Forests take decades." Jonah zoomed into a rendering of a residential bubble featuring rooftop farms and koi ponds. "People need houses now." "People need hope," she countered. "Something that says we didn't come 225 million kilometers to huddle in plastic igloos forever." "Hope is an expensive commodity to import," Jonah replied. The discussion spiraled. Not angry exactly, but tense enough that condensation formed on the dome's interior glass where breath met chill. In the end, the council granted Kyra a strip of regolith 2 kilometers from the main build site. Just far enough, Jonah noted, along with water rations nobody could spare and a pair of fabrication drones for making planters out of calcium-rich dust. By dawn, Kyra was outside staking sensor nodes. The cold gnawed at her gloves as she set the first sapling capsule into a shallow trench. When she activated it, the casing dissolved, feeding nutrients into roots that uncoiled like pale worms, gripping the soil with sudden vigor. Her visor display showed internal sap flow, sluggish but alive. A shadow arced over her. She looked up to see Jonah on a maintenance bike, its fat tires spitting red grit. He wore no expression. The truck's haul beam segments passed here, he said, braking. Don't let your forest encroach on the lane. Left 3 meters clear, she assured him. He nodded but lingered. She realized he was studying the sapling with a curiosity he refused to admit. Growth rate, he asked. If I keep temperatures stable, 10 centimeters a week. And if you don't? They die. Kyra dusted her gloves. Everything out here dies, unless we keep promises. Promises, Jonah repeated, as though tasting the unfamiliar word. He revved the bike. I make sure people keep them to themselves. Days slipped into souls, marked by twin rituals. Jonah overseeing structural teams, holograms flickering in dust storms. Kyra traversing the flats, coaxing chlorophyll into existence. He built ceilings. She sought to tear them away. Yet even separate trajectories intersect. Once, Kyra pressed too close to the construction perimeter and triggered an alarm. Jonah arrived, grim as a bailiff. During the resulting argument, a crane faltered, its magnetic coupler failing under spirited Martian gusts. A girder tumbled. Jonah grabbed Kyra by the collar, yanking her clear. Their helmets clacked together, their breath mingling in the fogged plexi between them. For a moment, the roar of wind, crane, and alarms vanished, and Kyra felt strangely anchored. That night, she brought 2 mugs of hot citrusoi to the fabrication bay. Jonah looked up from a mountain of stress charts. I save your life and you repay me with yellow sludge. It's the sweetest thing the hydroponic chef has invented so far, she said, settling beside him. Under bright work lights, his face seemed less carved from stone. Worry lines mapped a different landscape. How did you become the patron saint of oxygen? He asked. Cairo told him about summers in Washington's old temperate rainforests, about watching cedars die as warming seas altered jet streams. She spoke of the day she realized Earth's forests would not save themselves, and neither would humanity. Jonah's reply came slow. My mother was an architect on Luna during the first helium-3 rush. She built towers out of regolith blocks, swore they'd stand for a century. 15 years later, a meteorite swarm ripped them open like paper. She died inside one. Ever since, I overbuild. Domes within domes. He spread fingers over a tablet. If it isn't sheltered, it's doomed. Kyra lifted her mug. To doomed things, then. Bravely growing anyway. He clinked his cup against hers. It sounded like the first tentative note of an unscored symphony. The forest crawled from saplings into something recognizable, waist-high stems crowned with semi-lucent leaves, their surfaces stippled with bioengineered pores that drank carbon dioxide, exhaled fresh oxygen. A faint, almost musical rustle followed Kyra wherever she walked. She installed microheaters along routes, moisture nets overhead, all scavenged from supply caches Jonah nudged her toward without declaring so. Their rapport had found an understated language. He would leave crates labeled structural surplus by the greenhouse. She would send him data bursts on leaf transpiration that doubled as power-saving algorithms for habitat scrubbers. Then, Sol 1018 arrived. The forecast predicted heavy katabatic winds rolling off Olympus Mons, but forecasts on Mars were dreams spoken aloud, easily broken. The storm that clawed across the plains dwarfed anything the colony's short history had recorded. Dust lofted 10 kilometers high, electrical gradients snapping into furious static, UV sensors screamed, all personnel were ordered indoors. Kyra's trees, however, were outdoors. She watched from the operations dome as wind hammered the young trunks, their trunks bending like reeds. Soil scoured away from root pads. Her hand went to the suit rack. Jonah blocked the locker door. Don't. They'll blow out of the ground. She tried to push past, but he seized her shoulders. You can't reach them. Viz is 0. Come back in 2 souls. Replant whatever survives. They won't survive. Kyra's voice cracked through the comm array, audible across the tables of officers nervously monitoring gauge readouts. We need them to live. Jonah's eyes flicked to the main screen where oxygen production graphs overlapped population projections. His fingers tightened. Fine, but you're not going alone. He overrode the security lockouts and dispatched 2 utility drones loaded with polyglass sheeting and rapid set foam. When the airlock cycled, the storm nearly tore him from the threshold. Kyra's gloved hand caught his. Tethers clicked to their belts. Visibility beyond their headlamps was a red wall alive with grit. They crawled across the regolith, knees sinking, rovers unused because wheels would spin useless. Kyra's suit telemetry flashed hazard warnings that scrolled too fast to read. She counted steps by memory until her glove found the first trunk. The tree lay almost horizontal, roots half exposed, leaves flapping like torn flags. She felt a lurch of grief. Jonah unfolded the polyglass, but a gust nearly ripped it away. He shouted, "Anchor!" Kyra jammed root stakes while he shot foam that expanded, sealing edges to the ground, creating small geodesic shells over each sapling. It was like building emergency domes for trees. They worked by blind instinct, moving from one to the next. No longer architect and biologist, just two stubborn humans refusing planetary indifference. Hours blurred. Finally, Kyra's wrist monitor indicated oxygen reserves dropping to margins dangerous for exertion. They crawled back, battered, silent. Inside the airlock light, Kyra saw Jonah's cheeks streaked, where sweat had carved paths through dust. She touched his face, wiping grit, and realized her own helmet was off. So was his. They were breathing colony air, recycled, faintly metallic, but air, and they were alive. "The storm?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Still raging, but the trees." He hesitated, lips forming a smile too weary to sustain. "They've got roofs now." The next morning the storm had spent itself eastward, leaving skies tinted but calm. Kyra and Jonah rode a rover to inspect the damage. Half the forest lay under transparent domes that glistened with red dust, but inside green persisted. Leaves fluttered in breezes, now gentle. A dozen trunks were lost, yet most stood. The foam footings had fused with the soil, creating anchor cups that might, Kyra realized, serve long-term structural purposes. Jonah walked among them, touching polyglass as though testing cathedral glass. "They'll outgrow these shelters." "They will," she agreed. "Then we scale up." He knelt, drew a small sketch on his slate. Overlapping archways grown from living wood braced by lightweight composite. We build domes the forest can wear like exoskeletons. Branches reinforce trusses, trusses support branches. Habitat entwined with habitat. Kyra stared at him, a laugh bubbling. "Are you proposing arboreal architecture on Mars?" "You planted foundations," he said. "I'll build the ceilings. Marriage of necessity." She caught the word marriage, saw the faint rise of color on his cheeks, and mirrored it. In the hush of the recovering grove, each understood the conversation had changed. The design charrettes began that evening. The council, shocked by Jonah's sudden evangelism of living architecture, nevertheless greenlit a pilot project. Drone swarms harvested calcium plates for footpaths, while biofab units printed cellulose scaffolds shaped by Kyra's growth algorithm. Over weeks, trunks thickened into the scaffolds, bark fusing with carbon lattice so seamlessly that botanists and engineers argued over where life ended and structure began. New saplings were planted closer to the city, this time deliberately. Their roots knit soil beneath foundations, preventing dust erosion. Their leaves vented oxygen directly into air intake wells, slashing scrubber loads. People began walking outside longer, trusting the microclimate created between tree clusters and carved windbreaks. Jonah's domes evolved sections left intentionally open where atmosphere had thickened just enough to allow brief exposure. Retractable membranes closed when temperatures dipped. He erected elevated walkways winding through canopies, and at nodes he placed benches hewn from the same regolith wood composite. Colonists gathered there to watch sunsets fade from burnt orange to twilight cobalt, some removing helmets for precious minutes. One evening, Cairo found Jonah on a platform above the oldest tree, its leaves now the span of her forearm. Terraforming drones hovered in the distance, seeding bacteria into upper air. She joined him, leaning against a rail still warm from sun. "Do you ever miss Earth sky?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said, "but I don't miss hiding from meteorites." He glanced at the canopy arcing over them. This place, it might finally feel safe. Kira turned. The fatigue that once shadowed his face seemed lifted, replaced by openness, maybe wonder. She reached for his hand, steady and strong, calloused from polymer tools yet gentle on her palm. A breeze, faint but real, stirred hair at her temples. For the first time she tasted loam on that breeze-true soil forming from leaf litter and fungal threads. "Do you know what we just did?" she said. "Built benches?" Grew possibility. She guided his hand to rest on the rail, covering it with hers. Roots and shelter. We thought they were separate tasks. He squeezed her fingers. Turns out they're consecutive verses of the same song, under a sky slowly turning from sunset toward the pitch of Martian night. They watched the first stars pierce the thinning dust haze. The constellation of Earth's northern hemisphere lay skewed, but still recognizable. Kyra traced Orion with her eyes, thinking how the hunter's belt belonged to everyone, even here. "Do you think the kids born in these domes will feel caged?" she wondered. Jonah shook his head. "They'll feel held. There's a difference. Cages confine what's already there. Shelters protect what's still growing." Kyra leaned into him, helmet tucked at her side, forehead to his shoulder, inhaling recycled air flavored by a trace of cedar-like resin her trees emitted to deter bacterial rot. It was the scent of a planet changing. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" "For believing in something untested." He kissed her hair. "I didn't believe," he said. "I witnessed, and belief followed." The months that followed blended work and wonder. Terraforming reached benchmarks early because forest pockets multiplied carbon fixation. Dust storms still came, but wind profiles shifted around groves rather than through them, as though the planet itself learned to breathe differently. One dawn, alarms woke Kyra in her lab. Oxygen sensors spiked. She rushed outside and realized dew had formed along the rim of a microvalley. Actual liquid water unstored. She cried out, laughter hitting the commnet like music. Jonah arrived half-dressed, boots unlaced, to find her skating fingers across droplets shimmering on new grass analogs. "It's raining almost," she told him. He gazed at the foggy swirl lifting among branches, eyes shining. Then he drew her close, kissed her full, the kind of kiss that acknowledges vast distances crossed. Around them, leaves turned their faces toward the pale sun, and between the trunks, a city of domes glowed silver, spires softened by vines, walkways lit by bioluminescent moss, homes pulsing with the warmth of human presence. Many years later, children would ask how Mars became blue at the horizon, why breezes carried the smell of pine, why houses curved like petals instead of walls. The histories would mention treaties, funding packets, and gene arrays. But among the living roots and graceful arches, a simpler story endured. Of a woman who planted the first forest and a man who built roofs over seedlings, and how together they discovered that on a new world, love grows best when it has both soil to root in and shelter to bloom beneath. The planet kept turning, once, twice, countless times, each rotation thickening the air, darkening the green. And on many evenings, if one walked the suspended path above the eldest tree, one could still find two weathered suits resting side by side on a bench, their occupants silent, fingers interlaced, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves they had coaxed into forever.